Hello everybody, Factosaurus here. Yes, I know it's been quite some time. I'm sure you've all been wondering where I've been. And I'm gonna do the exact same thing that I did in that one video a couple years ago. I'm not gonna lie to your faces, I just didn't feel like making a video. And I procrastinated so much. So very much. On this one that was promised to you many times. But I'm here, I'm finally doing it. I had a friend, he's still my friend. I have a friend, and I told him about this one time. I don't know why this got brought up in the conversation, but it did. And I told him about the one time that I was like, you know what, I'm a genuine person when I'm not doing videos for a while, and I come back, I explain why, like the truth is just I didn't want to do it. But he goes, no, you gotta make stuff up, like, yeah, man, I had brain cancer. Not gonna do that. Not mean, I think. Anywho, that's not what the point of this video is. I just lost 90% of the viewership by yabbling about that. Yabbling, that's a new word that'll catch on. Yes, but as I said, this is a video I promised a while ago. This is a brand new start of a new series on this channel. That if it's anything like most series on this channel, it's gonna die after 2 episodes. But hopefully we can make it last a little longer than that. This is how accurate are the dinosaurs of Jurassic World Evolution 3. And of course, we have to start off with one of our favorites, Velociraptor, which we'll get to here in just a second. I'm going to explain how this is going to go down, and I'm sorry you've just been looking at a still screen here. Look, my mouse is moving. Ooh, wow. There we go, we brought in viewership again. But yeah, what we're going to do is I'm going to explain in depth-ish about the specific animal we're talking about today. That is Velociraptor, of course. And then at the end, I'm gonna give it a rating out of 10 based on how accurate I believe it is. If I leave out any information that you guys think, that you guys know about and are like, why didn't you do that? That's a cool thing. Then just put it in the comments. I'm open to learning new things. And if I accidentally get something wrong, tell me. Don't let me spread misinformation. I like learning. Alright, anyway, I think that's it. I think that's all I needed to say. Alright, let's get to it. Let's show off our first dinosaur in the series, Velociraptor. Let's see it release. Oh, look at all of them. In their horrendous frontier skin glory. How lovely.
Ladies and gentlemen, we are pleased to welcome
the Velociraptor to the park. Alright, lovely. Wait, we have them out. This is not the only batch. We have quite a few of them around here. Let's just go to the map. There's some other guys in here. I'll explain that. Like, look, we have this guy. And this guy. And this guy. We have a lot of them. And we'll explain them in a bit. Now, where's one that I want to click on? I've lost all Velociraptors. Here, we'll do this one. Alright, sure, that's fine and dandy enough. Alright, so, first things first. What does Velociraptor mean? Every single dinosaur, every single scientific name, rather, that's something I should bring up. All dinosaur names are not common names. So what is a common name? Common name is like tiger, or lion, or dog, or cat, or bear. You get the point, right? It's just something that we use in English to describe what it is that we're looking at. Oh, you're sleeping now? We gotta go to a different one. You're sleeping too. Oh, here we go. Nice. I love this skin too. Its scientific name. Scientific names are binomial, meaning there's 2 of them. It uses the genus name and the species name. Now the genus name is typically the thing that we use to recognize dinosaurs. On some occasions, you'll hear species names thrown in there as well, like Tyrannosaurus rex. Rex is the species. Now, most people probably do not know the species names of most dinosaurs, but yeah. So yeah, you got your genus, which is like Triceratops, and in this case, Velociraptor. There you go, that's your genus name. Species is Mongoliensis. This is Velociraptor mongoliensis. Now, what does that mean? And ooh, it got dark. What does this is mildly loud? 40. Jeez, why is it so loud? I'll put it there. We'll go in the middle. 32. That's our final one. What does Velociraptor mongoliensis mean? Velociraptor means swift thief. Here's the roots of how we decided that on the screen. And Mongoliensis means from Mongolia. Yes, that's the first thing we can talk about, is where this thing lived. Velociraptor lived during the late Cretaceous period, around 75 million years ago in Mongolia. Not North America, like the movies lead you to believe. In the original film, one of the first scenes where you get introduced to Alan Grant and Ellie Sattler, they're digging up a Velociraptor skeleton in Montana. And I'll tell you this, you're never going to find a Velociraptor in Montana. Not going to happen. But yeah, it's from Mongolia. More specifically, the Zhdokta Formation. I don't know if that's how you actually pronounce it. It's this. Kind of. Zhdokta. That's what this is. It's a big desert, essentially. Kind of. You got some plants here and there, like, look, there's trees near water, because why not? And we have a bunch of more scrubbish, nothing too full. Now I say that, I really overdid the vegetation on this, but it's fine. Goats weren't here. I just did that to showcase some kill animations for later points I want to bring up about this thing. Oh look, it's happening right now, let's watch it. And bam, dead. We'll talk more about hunting strategies for this thing later. But, yeah, and it shared its environment with some other dinosaurs. You may see them in the background, specifically in this game. We have Protoceratops and Oviraptor, which of course we'll go more in depth with them later on in their own individual episodes once we get to them. But yeah, now Mongoliensis is not the only species. There's actually 2 species. Maybe there's 3, maybe there's 1, we'll get to that. But the 2 that are mostly kind of recognized are Mongoliensis, which is kind of not very disputed. That's a pretty for sure thing. It is the type. It's the type species for the Velociraptor genus, so it kind of has to exist. So yeah, there's no debate at all on that one. Yeah, but the other one is known as Velociraptor olskami. I think I did that right. I think I said that right. Olskami was discovered quite a bit after. Mongoliensis was initially described in 1924. Many years ago. Over 100 years ago, actually. Physically. 102 years ago, as of this year. Maybe 105. Yeah, it'd be 105, because month. 100, what? No. No, what is, that was horrible math. That's mildly embarrassing, actually. 101 years ago, jeez. Okay. Yeah, that's where it discovered. It was a crushed skull, as well as some claws, and one of them was the sickle claw. The famous sickle claw that we will talk more about later. But yeah, and that was the only Velociraptor there was for many years, until 2008, when they discovered olskami, which was just a maxilla, which is here. You gotta remember, Capture mode, yeah, that's the one we want. Okay. So maxilla. So the maxilla, it's hard to explain on this. Maybe I'll just throw up a picture. I think that's what I end up doing, but whatever. So the maxilla is kind of like this. There's two bones that make up the most of the top part of the animals of a dinosaur skull. You have the premaxilla, which is like basically cuts off like right around here, and then it like tapers up like that, and it's a very thin line across the rest of it. The maxilla is everything underneath that pretty much. So it was this part. This is the maxilla. And there was also a lacrimal, which is kind of like this area right here. That's the lacrimal. So yeah, that's your little lesson for the day on dinosaur anatomy. We might do a little bit more of that later, who knows. But yeah, that's what Ulskamai consists of. As far as I know, there's only one specimen, and that's what it is. It's a maxilla and a lacrimal. However, there was some dispute with Ulskamai on whether or not it was a valid species or not. Yeah. It's not necessarily that it was a valid species, but rather whether or not it was actually Velociraptor. So they compared. There are a lot of Velociraptors specimens with skulls. So they looked at the maxilla of all specimens that are that have been definitively referred to as Velociraptor mongoliensis, and they compared them with the Ulskamai, and they found that the maxilla kind of goes way out of what would be considerable individual variation for the animal. I mean that like it's too different to fall as like, oh, it's just a thing that this specific individual looked a little bit different, because no two animals are the same. Like you'll have variation. In some animals it's more drastic than others. We'll talk about some very drastic individual variation when we get to Styracosaurus. Yeah, they found that it was kind of really outside individual variation. It was actually a lot closer to a closely related species, Linheroraptor. So there's some debate going on right now whether or not Ulskamai is a Velociraptor species or if it's actually some type of Linheroraptor, which is pretty interesting. Now, I said possibly 3, meaning that if Ulskamai remains, and of course we'll always have Mongoliensis, let's go to a different one. Let's look at something different for a while. You're sleeping. Stop doing that. You're purple. You look kind of cool. Basically, what that means is, what is 3? Number 3 is a big maybe. So, in the year 2020, there's a paleontologist named Mark J. Powers. So this was not too long ago. And for his master's thesis, he wanted to describe a very specific Velociraptor specimen that had been dug up. Specifically, I'm going to try to remember this off the top of my head. I'll look it up if I have to, but I don't want to. Specifically, MCPD-100/982. Oh, so close. Whatever. Anyway, MPCD-100/982. I got all the letters right, just scrambled them a bit. Dang it. They looked at that, and they also were paying attention to the maxilla. And they found that it definitely was different from Mongoliensis. It wasn't quite there. However, it wasn't genus related. It was similar enough to the point where it could still remain as a species of Velociraptor. And we get a nice little social animation here. Very nice. Yeah, it still is they believe it's a species of Velociraptor. Nothing can happen to get over there. It's fine. What's going on here? Oh, cool. We got a male one. Still definitely a species of Velociraptor, what they think. But not Mongoliensis. However, it has not been, no further work has been done on, no, actually that's not true. There was one other one, I don't remember the year, it was a short time after though, obviously because it's quite recent. They looked at the hind legs and saw that they were a little bit different from specimens that have been referred to as V. mongoliensis as well. So, yeah. Other than that, though, it has not been officially described, like, in a proper naming. So, is it valid? Technically, no. However, there's evidence pointing to it being a different species. And I believe that covers everything for species. We could talk a little bit about phylogeny. Velociraptor is a saurischian, the lizard-hipped dinosaurs, even though lizard-hipped dinosaurs include birds, even though there's a group called Ornithischia, which is the bird-hipped dinosaurs anyway. Saurischian covers two major groups, Sauropodomorpha and Theropoda. Velociraptor is a theropod. And then we get more specific until eventually we make it down to Dromaeosauridae, which is the family that they belong to. It's basically just everything that looks like this. Well, not like this. It looks a little different. By a little, I mean quite a bit, actually. But you can typically tell. They got fairly slender snouts, sickle claws at the bottom of their feet, and very, very fluffy, which we'll get to in a bit. You know, I've decided we're going to get to it now, actually. Never mind. Forget what I said. We're getting to feathers right now, because why not? Let's talk about feathers. Now, Velociraptor. Ooh, I love that skin. Velociraptor, one specific specimen, do not remember the name, I'll put it on screen. This specimen was discovered with quill knobs on its ulna, which in birds means feather attachment points, meaning that Velociraptor was very, very likely feathered, as was all closely related animals. Pretty much all dromaeosaurids are thought to have been pretty much fully feathered. There were some exceptions, like the bottom of the feet, like down here, probably were not feathered. They were probably like a chicken's legs, scaly. Oh, the face was probably significantly less feathered, like around here, around this area. It's where it would have been less feathered. But yeah, other than that though, pretty much entirely covered. Yeah, so this is where the ulna is this bone, by the way. Right here. There's two bones in all tetrapod arms. Or in all tetrapod forearms, rather. Technically, that would make three in the arm, because the humerus. But yeah, there's the ulna, which is the one on the bottom. And there's the radius, which is the one on the top. And then the humerus is the... What would you call that? Is there a name for that? Because this is a forearm, so is that a... I don't know what that is. That part. But yeah, this is where they were found, and this is where the feathers would extend off of, and it would continue up onto the humerus as well, probably. And then, yeah. So yeah, these were the big feathers, like actual feathers. The rest would have been more like fluffy type feathers up until the tail, where it was probably like sprawled out into a fan. We have little oviraptors in here, and like that type of thing. Big tail fan feathers. Yeah. That's where it would have been. I'll put a quick picture of one up here. This was, I think Fred Weirham is the one I like to use. That's just what I think of when I want to show people what an accurate Velociraptor would look like. It's that one. But yeah. And that also brings us to the wrists. A lot. And this isn't necessarily a fault of the game, because this is a Jurassic World game, meaning that if the dinosaur was in the movies, they kind of have to use that design for the game. And since Velociraptor has been in the series from the very start, that means it is suffering a lot from, in what I'm going to give it at the end, inaccuracy-wise, because of just when this design was made, which is in the early 90s. So pronated wrists are a problem with this guy. So dinosaurs could not move their wrists like this. They were more like, here it's like, I wish I did a face cam. But like, I might just, I'm record a video of myself doing this afterwards, aren't I? Yeah. So basically, these guys have a more of a, that motion. But in real life, it would have been more like a clapping thing, like this. It's pretty cool. So, had they tried to move their wrists like this, though, it would just straight up break. Like, that's not possible for them. And also, that wouldn't work for the wings. I don't. That's something. Pyroraptor is like nothing to talk about, and I would like to save something to talk about it with. So, we'll save how feather attachment works on wings for that, because there are severe issues with it in Pyroraptor. But, yeah. And we know, and technically no feather impressions have been found on Velociraptor. However, the existence of these quill knobs, and the fact that they are also part of Paraves, which is a clade that includes the Deinonychosaurs, which includes Argemaeosaurids, as well as Troodontids, as well as all birds. And Deinonychosaurs were the only group of non-avian dinosaurs that had true feathering, at least to our current knowledge. And since they're so closely related to birds, it would make sense that they had this feathering. And much earlier dinosaurs had signs of some sort type of proto-feathering. Not quite true feathers yet, but some sort of fluffiness that would eventually turn into the feathers you see on modern birds. It seems as though, unfortunately, the closest we're ever going to get to feathers on a Jurassic Park Velociraptor are these quills, which are found on the male model in the games, but they have also been seen in a few of the movies. In Jurassic Park 3, of course, the male Velociraptor in that film did have quills on the top of its head. However, more recently, in Jurassic World Rebirth, that Velociraptor also had quills. However, I wouldn't blame you if you didn't know that, given it had roughly 6 seconds of screen time. It was horrendous. Side note, we're going to go a little off track here from science. We're going to just go to a complaint I have with the more recent films. And that's just the horrendous underutilization of the Velociraptor. They used to be one of the trademark dinosaurs of this franchise. They all had their big moments throughout the first original trilogy. They were toned down a little bit in The Lost World, but they still had this big moment with them, a huge scene dedicated solely to them. And it was a cool scene as well. And then, of course, in Jurassic World, they had great moments as well. They toned them down a little bit, though. Like, they weren't as villainous, of course, but they still did have great scenes, and they had an actual role in the film. In fact, let's go to blue. We have a blue. I know we have a blue. We'll find the blue. There's the blue. However, in Fallen Kingdom is where it starts to go downhill. Fallen Kingdom, what you get? You get Chris Pratt interacting with her to trap her on the island. Then they shoot her. She's like down for the rest of the movie until the end with the fight with the Indoraptor. And that's when she shows back up again. And then in Dominion, she's only here to have a baby and then lose it at the beginning of the movie. She gets mad, she runs off, and then you don't see her again until like two hours later at the end, where they reunite her with Beta. And then in Rebirth just really is starting to be done with raptors, I think, is where this franchise is headed. Because the Velociraptors in Rebirth don't even do anything. They attempt to attack something for 6 seconds before being completely annihilated by the Mutadons. And then you never see them again throughout the rest of the movie. That was their entire role. I wouldn't be surprised if the next one has 0 Velociraptors in it. The first Jurassic movie to have no Velociraptors. Because if it's continuing down this path of less and less usage, I don't see how much worse you can get other than they're just not there. I really hope for this next movie, because they're going to go back to the island probably. It'll say Hubert. I hope that the Velociraptors have some moment where they kill off all the Mutadons and have an actual scene. Because the Rebirth Raptor is honestly probably the best design for them in the whole franchise. It looks really good. It's just the JP3 male, which was my previous favorite, but the colors are a lot nicer and more interesting. So it's the best in design-wise. but it did nothing other than exist to get mauled to death by a stupid hybrid. Ugh. Anyway, that's my rant over. We were just talking about feathers. And I know I've said multiple times that anatomy is over, but I've just realized I've somehow gone this entire video, which I think is only like 20 minutes right now, but we've somehow gone all this time without mentioning the very obvious flaw with this design, and that is just the size. Oh, and we're going to get a nice social animation. How lovely. It's the same one as back then, but, you know. And, like, it is just, I mean, it's too big. Significantly too large. The Velociraptors in the Jurassic franchise, I believe, are supposed to be around 6 feet tall. Which is insane. Why are you in the water? You're not helping me. I need something on land. Thank you. And, like, you could see it. Like, next to this Oviraptor, it looks massive. The Oviraptor is a more accurate size. I think it might be a bit undersized, but it's significantly closer than the Velociraptor is. They're simply way too huge. And, of course, in real life, they would have been just under 2 feet tall at the hips. At the top of their head, they probably reached around 2 feet tall. Wouldn't doubt it. Stop going to sleep. Why is it always when I want to look at it? Yeah, they're just a little under 2 feet tall when at the hips. And they're around 6 feet long, not 6 feet tall. Now, why are they so big in Jurassic Park? It's one reason, and it's that they weren't supposed to be velociraptors. These raptors are based on a closely related animal called Deinonychus. And Deinonychus, while still not as big as the raptors in the movies, are much closer to the size than real Velociraptor was. And in fact, I'm pretty sure that in universe, these aren't even Velociraptor mongoliensis. They're a fictional species called Velociraptor anteropus. And that is because there's a Deinonychus species, I'm pretty sure the only species of Deinonychus, and it is called Deinonychus anteropus, because that's what they're supposed to be. And this, of course, all stems from Michael Crichton writing his novel. When he was writing the novel, there was thoughts at the time that maybe Deinonychus was just actually a species of Velociraptor. So he went, well, Velociraptor is a much cooler name than Deinonychus. I can't blame them. I'd say it is. At least in terms of, like, the actual name, not the meaning behind it. I'd argue Deinonychus is better in that regard. But Velociraptor does, in fact, sound cooler than Deinonychus. That is true. So he used that name instead, and just made them the size, well, rather bigger than Deinonychus. He made them bigger for dramatic effect. And, yeah, there's a myth that it's based on Utahraptor. Utahraptor was not described until after the film came out, so no, they're not based on Utahraptor. It just so happened that there was a gigantic Dromaeosaurid in North America. So that was a pretty funny prediction. And another thing in Jurassic Park, they actually apparently were going to put feathers on their raptors. But it wasn't widely considered true at the time, and also feathers would just be too hard to animate because this was in the very beginning of advanced CGI. So they were just going to be too difficult to work with on the model, so they made them scaly. That's funny to think that the world's perspective on Velociraptor, just dinosaurs in general, could have been changed, at least the general public, could have been changed by giving feathers on their raptors. But I understand why they didn't, especially in 1993. Anyway, that's a rant that's done. We talked about size. Also, the skull. Just the skull shape on these guys. It's not too great. It's very boxy. Like, it's of course it's not perfect, but like, let's pause the game real quick, go into capture mode. This is like a, geez, you go very fast. This is like a perfect rectangle. It's very strange. In reality, the maxilla would have like dipped, oh wow, oops. I'm forgetting, I cannot click on things. And you wouldn't see that anyway. But you would click down. No. But yeah, the maxilla, or rather, this would be the rostrum, and more premaxilla rather. Anywho, yeah, so the top of the snout, rostrum, would have dipped down a bit. And it'd be more like that type of shape. Pretty much just imagine you get rid of this weird little thing they have going on where up the lacrimal, you call this a crest? Yeah. We'll call it a ridge, the lacrimal ridge. It goes down to more of this and it continues down along the snout. Imagine that's not there and like it's just this line right here. That's a lot better to what its snout would have looked like. And then also from above, it's just simply too wide. It's definitely not, looking at it now, it's not as wide as I remember. But it's definitely still too wide. Like, it wasn't that wide. Oh, we got Charlie. Nice, I like this skin. It wasn't that wide. In fact, that's actually something we can talk about for behavior-wise. Now, behavior, whenever I'm going to talk about behaviors in this series, it's important to note that behaviors are very, very difficult to gauge from fossils because they're just the remains of the animal. The best you can get for behavior is trace fossils, and trace fossils essentially, and markings on other different dinosaurs from your dinosaur. Those are kind of the best you can get. However, based on just general morphology and what we know about today's animals, and what was in their environment that we know of, there's some predictions that can be made. Are they going to be accurate? Maybe. I don't know. But yeah, so when we talk about behaviors, take this with a grain of salt because this is the most theoretical part of paleontology. So slender snout has led some to believe that Velociraptor could have been height, but could have been more scavenger-ish than other carnivores of its time, just because of how thin it was and what exactly it was living with. And also, the thin snout doesn't have to be scavenger-wise. However, there's other evidence. I'm pretty sure there was a Velociraptor specimen discovered with the bone of an asdarchid inside of it. Which, if you don't know what an asdarchid is, it's stuff like Quetzalcoatlus. They were the largest group of pterosaurs that ever lived. So, a 2-foot tall Velociraptor is probably not going to try and fight that. Very much probably not going to try and fight that. The smallest asdarchid was just a little under 7 feet tall. The smallest one. And I know size, I can see you typing it right now. Give me a second. I know size isn't determined by height, it's determined by weight. But still, height makes you look bigger than you actually are. Anywho, height-wise, much, much taller. Oh, that's cool, we got Blue and Charlie. Height-wise, much, much more dramatic than Velociraptor. What are you running? Ooh, are you gonna do the... Oh, what do you know? Here, scavenger. Eating the dead Alamosaurus that it never saw. I put this here as a reference to the Lost World novel. In the Lost World novel by Michael Crichton. The Velociraptor nest just outside it, there's an Apatosaurus skeleton. And I thought I could reference that here with the Alamosaurus skeleton that the game provides. It's unfortunate Alamosaurus isn't in this game. And it was a DLC creature, so... Unless they do a Dinochirus with us again, I doubt it's going to get added in a free update down the line. Who knows? Honestly, the Allosaurus model isn't great. What's happening here? Okay. Look how peaceful they are. Just jumping around with each other, having a great old time. But yeah, that's... And I wouldn't doubt it. Almost all animals, especially... Almost all carnivorous animals will scavenge, if given the opportunity to. Why would you waste your time going to attack a big old fully grown Protoceratops when there's that lovely juicy dead-ass Darkid over there? That's a lot better. It's more food and you don't have to really waste any energy to get it. However, the slender snout has also been pointed to the idea that maybe it just hunted smaller prey like lizards and Yeah, lizards. Basically just very tiny stuff that wouldn't pose much of a challenge to it, which makes sense for its size. It was a very small dinosaur, unlike what we see here. And it did live with some larger ones like Protoceratops down there. You can't tell in game, but in real life, Protoceratops was bigger than Velociraptor. And there is a fossil of them locked in combat. However, I'm going to save explanation of that for the Protoceratops video when that eventually happens, because some of these videos will be a lot longer than others, just due to the nature of paleontology. Some dinosaurs we know a lot more about than others. Like, the length of this video should be a fairly long one. Actually, surprisingly, Velociraptor does not have a huge amount of scientific importance, despite its importance in pop culture and how prominent it is in media. It actually is not very important in the realm of paleontology. It's just kind of there. Nothing huge has been gained from this, other than the other feather thing. But we've known about other feathered animals for a while since that. Like Archaeopteryx, that was a big one. So it didn't really bring anything huge to the table. So, yeah. And this will be a fairly long video. I had to pause in between to do something, and I was already at like 30 minutes. So I imagine this will be a longer one. And it's still not going to be one of the longest, probably, not even close. I have a lot to say about some of these guys. Where, I forgot what I was talking about. Yes, we were doing behavior, we were talking about scavenging. And then we moved on to hunting, yes. I would love to get one hunting a goat, but I know the likelihood of that happening is not great. But in terms of actual hunting, do I want to save this for something that's... No, I don't care. I'm just going to talk about it now. There has been... Let's talk about the claw. Let's talk about the claw. The big sickle claw down here. The one that... one big famous part of this animal is that claw. That claw in the movie is described to be 6 inches long. Of course, in real life, it was more like 2 inches long. Yeah. And it was covered in a keratinous sheath, meaning it was longer than what the fossil implies. So, yeah. There's an interesting little tidbit. There you go. The claw is described as being used for slashing in these movies. What's happening down here? I cannot see this one, however, I really like it the way it looks, so I want to look at it. Oh, but we can't see the claws. Okay. The claw has been described as being used... Oh, look, here's it scavenging again. Claw's been notably described in the films to be used as a slashing thing, to disembowel its prey. However, that was likely not the real use of this thing. Oh, I want to click on that one. That's the Lost World one. Yes. Oh, it looks so cool. That was likely not the actual purpose of the claws of Velociraptor, or any dromaeosaur for that matter. There's been a hunting strategy proposed that involves the use of these sickle claws, known as the Raptor Prey Restraint Method, or RPR. Now, RPR, and that's how I'm going to refer to it through the rest of it, so remember, Raptor Prey Restraint, is a theoretical hunting strategy for dromaeosaurs, and it's where they would jump on top of their prey and sink their hooked claws. The sickle claws are getting jabbed into the backs of their prey while they're on top of it. And they're basically just going to stick really far in and act as anchors for the animal to remain on top of its prey. And then it's going to use the wings on its arms, and yes, they are wings. They don't work very well for flying. But they're going to use their wings, the giant feathers on their arms, and basically hold them out in kind of T-pose fashion. And that's there to stabilize them while they're anchored in. So that way they're not flopping around everywhere. And then they're just going to use their teeth. They're going to bite into the animal repeatedly until it bleeds out, essentially. It's a very very... I've forgotten what that word is that I wanted to use. It's, very condensed explanation, there we go. Condensed explanation of what RPR is. But that is a theoretical hunting strategy. So, yeah. And even so, even without RPR, I believe it is more accepted that the sickle claws were used more for jabbing, and like literally just a stabbing, rather than a slicing motion, in use. And then finally for behavior, I think this is a very interesting thing to talk about. And that is, oh, we got a little baby one. We'll talk about the babies, because I did actually learn something that I had zero clue about while researching for this video about juvenile velociraptors, but right now we need an adult for description of what I want to talk about. Can you stop running to the water? Here, Jurassic Park, big one. You won't fail us. No, but you will sit down, and I'm guessing you're going to go to sleep. Or not. Okay. But yeah, as you can see here, I put a ton of them in. A ton. I believe there's over 20 if you count the babies. Adults, I believe there is just straight up 20 adults or so. I think the exact number is 18. Yeah, but the point is there's a lot of them in here. However, I mainly just did that so that way there would be a Velociraptor in close vicinity to click on when I'm getting bored of a design and want to look at a new one at all times. And you know, it's been reinforced by lots of forms of media, including Jurassic Park, of course, and this game as well, that Velociraptor and just Dromaeosaurs in general were pack hunters. However, there's no real actual evidence for that. Is it completely out the window crazy theory? There's no way that's going to happen? Of course not. In fact, I would not be surprised if they hunted in packs. However, there's just no real actual evidence for it. Specifically for Velociraptor. As far as I know, Deinonychus is the only one with true evidence, and of course, Velociraptor in the films and by association, I guess also these games, is based on Deinonychus, not actual Velociraptor. So it would make sense why that is. But Velociraptor has no real evidence of it, of hunting in packs. There's no hunting, there's no bone beds, I don't believe. There's no individuals. All individuals are usually found all separated. I don't believe there's ever been a time where you find multiple. So yeah, there's just no real evidence of it. Would they have had to get together? Of course, that's how species breed and survive. But most of the time, were they very gregarious creatures? Maybe. There's no evidence, fossil evidence for it. But that could change. You never know. And I wouldn't describe it as completely off the table. I think it could make sense. I very much would not doubt if that was a thing that happened. But yeah. I'll save what the evidence is for Deinonychus for the actual Deinonychus video, because despite this Velociraptor supposedly just being Deinonychus with a different name, there is a Deinonychus, an actual dinosaur, a different dinosaur in this game that is supposed to be Deinonychus. And it has two very different sides to it. But yeah, so that's why I'm going to save some of that for Deinonychus. Yeah. Pack hunting, as I just said, just to reaffirm it, not completely off the table, however, no real evidence for it. Now let's talk about the juveniles, because the juveniles are fairly interesting. This is what this game's interpretation of can you not sleep? Could you not sleep either? Why are they all sleeping? Can I get a live one? One who's up and at it? There's this one. No, you're not at home. There we go. Found one. This is what this game's interpretation of a baby Velociraptor is. And in all honesty, this is probably much, much closer in size to a real Velociraptor. In fact, I think this is near spot on. This is much closer. I could see people using them for that purpose, like they're just supposed to be actual Velociraptors instead of just babies. That's interesting. I might use them for that. But yeah, I believe this is supposed to be based on beta, from Jurassic World Dominion. I can definitely see some differences. Like, it's definitely not an exact match to Beta, but it would make sense. That's the only time there's been a baby Velociraptor in this franchise. It would make sense for them to do it based off of that. Well, we got another one right here. Now, is this what a juvenile Velociraptor did in fact look like? Well, I don't know. So, juvenile Velociraptor is an interesting story. Supposedly, one does exist. In 1999, some colleagues, I'll put names up on screen because I don't remember right now, but some colleagues supposedly discovered what they believed to be a juvenile Velociraptor specimen in Mongolia. And that was it. However, that was in 1999. But no actual paper has ever been published describing this specimen, from what I understand. So, is there a real juvenile Velociraptor specimen? Possibly. However, it has not been officially described at all. So we don't know. And what exactly it consists of, I also do not believe we know what that is, other than that it supposedly exists and has just been sitting waiting to be worked on for nearly 30 years. I believe that covers pretty much all of what I want to talk about for Velociraptor in this episode. So let's take it on over to the species viewer, and I will give it its rating. This next section is just where I pretty much summarize all my thoughts, get it all condensed. I have talked to you a bunch about what is really known about the animal and what exactly it is, but now we're going to bring it all together, and I'm going to give it its final rating out of 10 on how accurate Jurassic World Evolution 3's Velociraptor is. So let's talk about it. Here we're in the species viewer, so that way it doesn't run away and do sleeping. So that way we can get a proper look at it. I've just selected the Jurassic Park skin because I like it for the female, and then for the male we have Jurassic Park 3 male, because, I don't know, it looks cool. So we'll use this since this is closer. Big main points out of the way. Of course, too large, pronated wrists, head is too wide and too boxy, and of course the big one, no feathering. Now, I missed the chance to talk about it because I didn't end up with a Jurassic Park 3 male skin when I was populating the area. But I will take the opportunity to talk about this now because I didn't. And it involves skull shape yet again. And unfortunately, that's as far as I can zoom in. That sucks. Okay. But you can see here that it still has the same general problems as all the other skins. However, this one in particular, none of the other male skins have this. It's just this one, and that is of course because it is a film model, so they have to implement it the way it was. And that is, look it up here. Is there a way I can pause? Oh, I can. Okay, that's great. So it's not bouncing up and down. But right here, you'll see it. And you can even do it up here. Once again, up here, down its nose on the rostrum. Or near it, rather. I don't think that's the rostrum. It might be, I'm not sure. Right here, up down the nose, you'll see it has this set of crests. Almost. They're not very pronounced, they're very subtle, but they are colored, so you can definitely see that they're there. Of course, if this model is inaccurate, and I showed you how it looks, once again, it's like a slant down from this little ridge that they have, and that would be more accurate from here. It's slants down like that. That would be more accurate to the real animal. But on here, we have kind of the opposite problem where it's going up, it's slanting upwards, right above where the antorpal fenestra would be. It's slanting upwards right here to create this little nasal crest, which Velociraptor probably did not have. Velociraptor, you can't really sex an extinct animal. It's very hard There are some very few cases where you find medullary tissue on the bone, which is only found when an animal is getting ready to lay eggs, or if it has already laid eggs very recently, and it's developing that to make calcium for the eggshells. But that's just if you can tell if it's a female. That's definitively female. As far as I know, there's no way to tell if an extinct animal is definitively male, unless it's a more recent animal closely related to modern day organisms, like maybe like some sort of. Oh no, I guess I don't know. Anyway, forget I said that. As far as I know, there's no way. And Velociraptor has no medullary tissues. There's no definitive females. There's no definitive males. So this sexual dimorphism is kind of thrown out the window. Males likely did not have quills. Could they have had a little crown of feathers? Quite a few of the male versions of Dromaeosaurs in this game have these big crown of feathers on their head. And a lot of modern birds have that too. And honestly, I don't think that's entirely out of the realm of possibility. That's not something you can tell from bones, because it's feathering, it's soft tissue. Or not really tissue, but it's not very fossilizable. Wow. Preservable, that's a much better word. It doesn't work very well in fossilization. So, unless we get an impression on a later specimen down the road, we won't know that. However, I do think that would be interesting. So, like the quills on the head, probably not, but maybe a crown of feathers, possibility. One thing I do quite like, man, I'm sorry, I should be getting to the rating, but I've noticed that, I just realized that this has lips, or rather oral tissue, if you will, which is something that a lot of the theropods in this game do not have, and Velociraptor is one of the few exceptions to this. And lips are pretty definitive. Not definitive, but well accepted in the field as having been on these groups of dinosaurs, because without lips the teeth get worn down easier because they can't be kept wet, and they're more susceptible to being, well, they're just out in the open, there's nothing covering and protecting them. And Velociraptor in this game has that, which I do quite like. That's one of the few things that this gets better than a lot of other models, especially for when it was designed, because once again, this model was designed all the way back in the early 90s. I don't think it would have been designed in 93, because that's when the movie came out, probably 1992. But either way, yeah. I think that's a final note, but yeah, back to sexual dimorphism. Yeah, all skulls do that slant down thing. Pretty much nothing does that weird, like this opposite thing. So they I think we can say for near certainty that they didn't have that. They didn't have a crest like that. Of course, they have the pronated wrists, and I think pack hunting is behavior-wise, but once again, behavior is way more theoretical. Slashing claw as opposed to piercing. And I think that covers just about all of it. So overall, what do I rate it? This is a tough one. It's getting a low rating. It's not getting one that's very high. I'm floating between 3 and 4. We'll go in the middle. A 3.5 out of 10. Because there's a lot wrong. However, if I didn't know what Jurassic Park was, and someone told me that this is supposed to be Velociraptor, I'd say, okay, the general body shape is down, but a lot of it is wrong. A lot of more specific details are not great. However, the general body plan, yes, sure, that's a Velociraptor, why not? And that is not the end of the video, because it's the end of what we're going to do with Velociraptor, likely for the rest of the series. Until Rebirth DLC comes out, then I'll take a quick peek at the Rebirth skins for the Raptors, and I'll complain about how they had no screen time again. But other than that, that is all we will do, likely, for this series with Velociraptors. So say your goodbyes. We'll see them again in the backgrounds of future Jadocta formation animals, but for now, that's all we're going to see of them. And now it's time to decide, what animal are we doing next in this ever so very, very long series. Let's spin the wheel. Can you tell which series I'm ripping off yet? Let's spin the wheel and figure out who's next. Who's it gonna be? It's Psittacosaurus. Okay, interesting. That's kind of cool. All right, great. So Psittacosaurus will be our next dinosaur that we do in the series. That's all I have to say. I'll see you whenever that comes out. Hope you all have a wonderful day. Thank you for watching, and I hope to see you in the next one. Bye-bye.